The cake I'm making today is from Star Wars The Force Awakens, a BB-8 chocolate cake. So here we are making our favourite little droid from Star Wars The Force Awakens, BB-8. I've just used some mud cakes, just mixed in some oven-safe bowls, made two semicircles as you can see here, cut the bases of them just to get them nice and flat so I could stick them together. As you can see, I've also trimmed around the edges just to get it a bit more spherical. Had some ganache that I'd prepared the day before. And as you can see, I'm just covering the whole cake with that just to really get a good base, and it certainly took plenty to get it as smooth as I can, since BB-8 is nice and smooth. So moving on to the head for BB-8, exactly the same process. I've just got half a sphere. I've cut and trimmed that a little bit just to get a flat base of it. Then again with the ganache, covered all that over. I just did the base first, as you can see, before putting all this into the freezer. So both of those cakes into the freezer just to let that ganache set a little bit, and I'll come back to that later on. While both cakes are in the freezer, I then moved on to the base for the cake. Covered the base with some ganache. In this case I decided to use these $1 vanilla wafers, put those in a plastic bag and just bash the heck out of them. These things were like $1 a packet. The great thing about these wafers is they have a layer of cream in between them, so it doesn't make a complete mess. They still stick together a little bit, but it also gave me the exact effect I wanted of that crushed up sandy look that you see in the desert scenes in the movie. So for me it was just perfect. I then took the cake base back out of the freezer, then got the ganache out again, have done a second layer. So this is to try to get a better, smoother layer. Something different I did here, just a bit of an experiment. Dip my hand in some hot water and then just rub that over the cake just to really try to get it a bit smoother again. And it seemed to do a pretty good job by doing that. So it's not something I've done before, but I just went with the theory and thought, well, it'll probably work. Again, back to the head, I just trimmed it a bit because I didn't quite have the right shape. For reference here, I was using the BB-8 Sphero remote control toy. So it's really cool and a really good reference, obviously, for this cake because it has all the shapes, it has all the design on it, it has all the colours. Once I've got the shape that I was quite happy with, then also applied all the ganache to this and covered the whole thing. So I'll do a whole layer of this, put it back in the freezer, let it set a bit more and come back for another layer. Now fondant really is not my strength. I seem to wrestle with it every single time, but I do love using it. So as you can see in this case, I'm using the roller just to roll all the fondant back onto it. Put the cake underneath, then roll the fondant back out to drop it over the top. You've got to then work really quick to just rub the fondant with your hands. Make sure you have warm hands, it really does help. But just keep rubbing it around to get the shape you want, get all the folds of the fondant out. And as you can see, I'm just smoothing it off now, trimming it around to be able to get a nice clean cut around the base of the body of BB-8. Then transfer that over. As you can see here, I also moved it just a bit off centre. I thought it was just a bit nicer composition, I guess, of putting the cake on the base. Once I did that, I've moved on to the head. You can see I'm using a spatula here just to be able to move it around. Got the rough shape I wanted and dropped the fondant on top of that. And as you can see, I just use that pizzicato just to get a nice flat edge around the base of that head. You can see the bottom of it there where I've already covered it with fondant. It doesn't matter about that join line that you can see because we're not going to see that once it's on the body of the cake. This is for BB-8's eyes. Roll up a ball, cut that in half. As you can see, I've used a cutter there just to get the shape. And then worked out with the placement where all the circles have to go. I'd held the head over just to make sure I had the placement of the head. What I've used there is measuring cups to put a slight indent into the fondant. I figured that was just going to be a much better way for me to get a lot more accurate. So they're a really good guide. I didn't mind putting some little indents there. I didn't think that was going to affect it too much. Colour choice we're using for BB-8 is Marigold. There's lots of different ways you can do this. You can colour fondant if you want and cut that out and that would be fine. I thought it was just going to be too time consuming. I didn't have a lot of time to make this cake, so the idea was just to get these shapes in and paint it straight on. So really now it's just a case of trying to keep within those guidelines that I've created by using those two different sized measuring cups and just painting it on. And one thing I found that you don't really want to do with the paint is go over itself too much, because it really just starts rubbing it off. So the key is to get it on fairly quickly and just build up your layers that way. Ultimately in the end it got a pretty good result for me. In this case they're all exactly the same distance from each other, so important to just make sure that I had those completely opposite from each other on the other side of the sphere. Okay, at this point I've just jumped straight ahead where you can see I've already done some of the work on BB-8. There's a lot more detail in it already. So one thing I found with this, I'd started trying to do some of these details with a brush and to get the fine lines, but using one of these pens, it's so much quicker to get a better result. It's all edible paint, so there's no issues with that as well. I haven't really sped this up that much, and it's just me drawing over. I am being a little bit loose, but I'm not after the fine detail to make it totally precise. Just constantly rotating the BB-8 toy that I had to match exactly that design, well, close enough. I've painted in the grey areas, as you can see as well. One tip for that I found, I did mix some black paint with white paint. Now the thing I found with the black, that it was very blue. So I had to add a bit of red to it just to balance it out a bit to get more of a neutral grey colour. So that's just a bit of a tip, that even when you mix the black and the white, it might give you a different coloured type of grey. So then I'm doing exactly the same thing on the head, just taking my time, although moving quite swiftly, not to be too completely accurate about it, but just using that Sphero toy again as reference to paint all the shapes in that I needed, bearing in mind that I had to make sure I got my spacing somewhat right as I moved around the head. I did the same trick at the top of the head just to get those circles to make an imprint of the line on the top. As you can see, I've cut up a skewer, just a kebab type skewer, put that in to make sure that holds on. I probably didn't need to, it might have been a bit overkill, but I thought just to be sure. As you can see, I've painted the base of them as well to make sure that I can get all that black on there without ruining the rest of the head. So just much easier, of course, to paint those first, then put it on, then I painted the rest of them. To do his aerials, again I just used the kebab skewers, a bit of white paint, a bit of black paint, stuck it in, very easy. So this time to get the circle on top, I just used one of those kind of cookie cutter style shapes, painted it on the base, as you can see with that grey, and stuck it down. Again, here's what I was talking about with the grey, where I had the black and white but mixed a bit of red in just to get it more neutral. You can see also some of those areas where I started painting it with grey but then realised I had the pen, and the pen, it's actually a brown pen, but it's absolutely the perfect colour that I needed to paint all those lines in, and works a treat. You can see it really just defines the shapes of BB-8 and all his markings. And that's really about it. It's pretty straightforward. It's obviously a lot of detail in. I'd urge people to get one of these pens if you're looking to do any type of detail with this, and just don't be afraid with it. It's really not hard to use. It rubs off really well on the fondant. I really enjoyed using it. Now the cake was very well received. As you can see, it looks very similar, I thought, to the Sphero one and the little bobblehead that we had as reference. So that's all there is to my BB-8 cake from Star Wars The Force Awakens. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel for more cake creations. Join us on Facebook, Cakes You Make. Chat with us on Twitter. Leave some comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, if there are cakes that you want to see me make, let me know. Thanks very much, and look forward to bringing more cake creations to you.